Hey, welcome tonight to the safety meeting from Provoking Safety. My name's Kevin, and this is Provoking Safety, and actually it's the safety meeting part of the channel where, hopefully we can start to build a community. We can get together and chat and review and go over safety stuff and just topics that affect health and safety in the workplace and of course, outside the workplace. So, and you know what? There's a lot of things that do affect how health and safety is carried out. Honestly, there is. Really and truthfully, the biggest question you have to ask yourself, and the topic tonight is health and safety a political game? And so I'll put the question out there and I'll ask you, and you can weigh in the chat or weigh in comments afterwards. By all means, insert comments when the stream gets posted later on. I appreciate all the comments. But are you finding that you're having to make like backroom deals, shove your programs and different processes through almost what seems like a different approval process than other departments and other people? Do you feel that this is like swimming up a waterfall and that you can't get anywhere without maybe compromising your ethics? Well, you know what? You're not alone. Honestly, you're not. It's the truth. We do lots of stuff as health and safety professionals in our methodology and our modus operandi and how we carry ourselves through things. And there's many that have followed the proper steps. You've assessed the situation. You've collaborated with workers involved in identifying the hazards. You've determined issues, even thought of controls. And you do what you can, and then all of a sudden, something like that. It comes to this full crashing, miserable stop. And not for any fault of yours. There could be a lot of different reasons. Often you're told it's things like funding or it isn't the time. More often than not, the other thing that tends to affect it is internal politics. Hello, Jim from Calgary. And so, what do? How do you get over these politics? And that's what we're going to look at tonight. And we're going to weigh in some suggestions, maybe talk a bit, and go over some different things. I've made a lot of mistakes in my career, and I've learned from them, and hopefully these are some mistakes that you can learn from. And also, too, is working as safety professionals, a lot of times management and people management is part of what we do and what we learn to become health and safety professionals. So inasmuch, hopefully there's some lessons in that material that I can also help and bring forward. And here's another example that maybe some of you might have encountered where you have identified an absolute non-compliance issue or where the organization is at high risk or both. There's risk and non-compliance. And let's use this as a good example because it's something that happened to me personally. Is identified workers that are working alone or in isolation, meaning that there's no way that they could summon help should they become periled or they're not being checked on very often. So they could end up in a situation where they're hurt or worse for a long amount of time and nobody may know about it. And so lots of different jurisdictions have legislation in place regarding this. And now you deal with it along the proper process, as I've said, identifying the hazards, consulting and collaborating with the workers and having some controls implemented, but you get some, how should we say, pushback from the manager, the workers manager, or other managers, or the organization as a whole. And so what do? And now this, I won't say what happened to me entirely. I want to try and put it in more of it because this was many years ago, but I'll put it in today's perspective. You take it to your manager, and of course the usual fun begins of manager meetings, executive meetings, memos, speaking notes, presentations, hoop after hoop, hurdle after hurdle, and you find out that, you know what, you're still dealing with meetings and hoops, and during all of this time you notice that the HR group managed to get a policy enacted where now everybody is required to identify their desired pronouns within their email signatures. Now, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's unnecessary. I'm not saying anything like that. But what I'm saying is these are the apples and oranges, or the apples and turnips that we have to deal with as safety professionals, because we find that we try to bring something through, and yet a group that or a department where something is not nearly as important or pressing is on hand, and it seems to go through first. And so you find yourself, as you're editing your email signature and you're putting in that he, her, or whatever the case may be, that you're wondering, where did you go wrong? Did you not schmooze enough? Should you have made some other backroom deals and bargains? Now, before you go questioning your decisions, or worse, maybe even thinking of compromising your ethics, let's kick this around a bit. Let's talk about it, and let's go over it, and let's bring it out. And hopefully through this, I can share, as I've said, some things that I've found that have worked. And if you stick with me towards the end of the video, or end of the stream, pardon me, I will also outline some good do's and don'ts for navigating your way through the political swamp at work. And it applies to not just safety professionals, but everybody. So first off, let's just go over and cover the chat rules. Now, participation is nice. So, and I don't mind if you want to be a wallflower and just watch behind, or you've checked into the video and you think, well, I'll just watch it later. That's fine too. I don't mind. But if you check in and you want to be a part of it, by all means, participate. Log in, introduce yourself. Introductions are nice, like Jim from Calgary. Hi, my name's Kevin from Calgary, or I'm Fred from Lower Slobobia, wherever you are, but introductions are nice. Ask and answer questions. Not everybody knows the information, and a lot of times you may want more information, so by all means, ask questions. If I don't address it in the chat, and you can answer a question that's been asked, by all means do it. Your knowledge and opinions count. We're all business professionals, safety professionals here, and you know what? It's certainly isn't going to hurt, and it also builds community and builds rapport, and that's what it's for. And above all and beyond all, be civil. No name calling, no insults. None of us were born with a safety knowledge right off the bat, and we didn't all exit the womb with expertise in our called fields. So by all means, just be respectful. Yeah. So now, the other thing to do is we have to understand, we have to put it in perspective. And as health and safety professionals, or a lot of times, if you're in a group where you're not in the mainstream, and I'm just using health and safety because it is a health and safety channel, but as health and safety, what we do, it really isn't sexy. Honestly, it's not. And often it doesn't make headlines anywhere unless, you know what, something bad happens. When did you read in your local newspaper, if anybody reads newspapers, or see as a headline on the internet that safety professional makes his workplace safer? You don't often see it. What you do see is, because of an unsafe act, this worker died, or this worker was severely injured. That's what you do see. That's what makes the headlines. So, and the trouble with it is, really and truthfully, we're not really any more than a footnote in company newsletters unless there's an ulterior motive somewhere. And even not all that time either. We even have a hard time trying to just get people that are running seminars and company meetings to just enter in with some sort of preventive emergency statement, like in case of fire, exit that way. You know, we even have that trouble. But really and truthfully, there's a big but here. What we do as safety professionals is necessary. In fact, we truly are more valuable to the bottom line than most people realize. But we aren't sexy. That's the truth. And sadly, in this day and age, things where you can get virtue signaling kudos really often get more attention. That's the absolute truth. Now, as I said before, I've made some mistakes in my life, so I want to start off and work through this with things that I've done, maybe share some examples, and things that you should do and things that you should don't do. And as I said, towards the end, when we go through all of the process in the safety way of navigating the swamp, maybe what we'll do is we'll talk about some good tried and true methods so that you can avoid being sucked into workplace politics or become a victim of negative politics in the workplace. So, yeah, so let's start comparing it. One of the biggest things when you're navigating workplace politics and you've brought some sort of a proposal forward, or you want to make a presentation, or you've made a presentation and all of a sudden you look back and it's crickets, And you have to consider a few things. So let's look at number one. How did you wrap it? Okay, how did you? And I don't mean how did you finish it up. It's how did you present the whole thing. And the big number one thing, and I really hate the term. A lot of people will call us safety Nazis, and it's the truth. It's happened. You'll get lots of people who go, it's a regulation, it's a law, it's legislation, etc. And by all means, a lot of times, health and safety stuff is covered off by legislation, and it is a requirement. But you know what? Nobody likes being forced into doing anything. So did you force it or did you sell it? Hey, that's the big question to ask. So remember, sometimes when you're a victim of workplace politics, sometimes it's because of what you did. Not necessarily the stuff that you're trying to sell, but it might have been what you did. Now, it's more than just stating the law. Like a lot of people want to know what's in it for me. What's the bottom line? What does it mean to the workers that you're dealing with? And a lot of times you'll bring processes forward and you'll get pushback from everybody, even though it's required. So you have to be mindful of the people that are going to be implementing these corrective actions and these processes that you outline. So in doing that, you run into problems. You do. And it's not often that you don't. So here's the thing. Did you talk to your manager beforehand, or did you advise your manager? Did you get them on board? I found when I ran into a big problem, it was because I was trying to handle it on my own. I saw the problem. I did. I saw the problem, and so, hey, I know the solution, so I started outlining it and everything else. And then when it hit the fan, I'm not going to say what hit the fan, but when it hit the fan, all of a sudden, my manager got advised that I was doing all of this stuff by someone else, by another manager. And so therein lies the problem. So if it's a situation, get your manager on board right away, especially if it's one of non-compliance or it's one that you know or think may be an issue. And it doesn't hurt. Maybe it's just a memo. Maybe it's, hey, manager, I found that this group is working, there's a lot of people working alone. It's contrary to the legislation. And I'm going to start to dive into it and see what I can do to fix it. I'll keep you apprised of what's going on. And there you go. You have your manager advised, because a lot of times your managers are going to have your back. Now, we've all had good and bad managers. I mean, I had one, you can look at one of my videos where I had a supervisor that told me, he said, Kevin, I know what you do. I don't understand any of it, but I know what you do. Yeah, but most of the time I can safely say that I've had, for the most part of my life, my working career, I've had really good managers who have always had my back and were there to mentor me, correct me, and help me out as needed. So make sure you advise your manager and let them know what's going on. Now, the next thing you got to ask yourself when you're going to present this, is it practicable? And so in doing so, did you consult the workers who you're going to expect is going to implement the plan? The last thing you want, and a lot of this too in dealing with workplace politics, is building a reputation. And I know you're likely going to say to me, hey, what do you mean reputation? I don't have time. There's workers who are working in non-compliance and putting themselves at risk, by all means. But a reputation, you should always be looking at it that there's never a bad time to try and do something to build it. Think of it like an investment. Think about it where you may have the opportunity to put $1,000 into an investment one year, but if it's been a bad year, like COVID-19 year, you may only be able to put $25 in. But anytime you have the opportunity to invest in your reputation, do it. It aids to your ability to work through workplace politics. So, is your solution practicable? Is it doable? Is it something that the workers are going to be able to manage? So before you take anything to your manager, have you thought about all of this? Do you have an implementation plan? And if you have an implementation plan, what's it going to take? Is it going to be doable? Is it within the budget? And if it's outside of the budget, what are your contingencies? So it helps. And as I said, let's go back to that idea of a reputation. If you go to everybody with a well thought out plan, yes, there's always going to be holes in every single plan, but at least if you have part of it there, it's going to help you. And when you're building that reputation and investing in that reputation, it's going to go a long way for you. So now the next thing is, I talked about manager meetings and executive meetings. So here's the question. Who's going to be presenting this to the executive? And I've done this in the past. I've prepared a bunch of notes for my manager to deal with something. And I asked, do you need me there? No. So I went on holidays. You know, didn't work out. Come back after 2 weeks, and you know what? Nothing happened. Nothing was done. And I was still back at square one. And the problem is because there was questions that were asked, and there was no answers available for them because they weren't part of the speaking notes and they weren't part of the preparations I'd made for the manager. So you want to make sure if there's a manager presentation or you're going to be doing something, it helps to solve a lot of political issues, because the side that's thinking that they've got your manager over the barrel now thinks they're going to win. And guess what? No matter what, it looks like your fault. It doesn't matter if the manager wasn't prepared or anything else like that. It's still going to come back on you. So make sure that your manager is well prepared. And if you have to, even plan to be there. Plan to be called in at a moment's notice. So should I have rescheduled my holidays? I don't know. But what I did going forward is, if I had this crucial thing, I made sure that I didn't schedule holidays until it was pretty much through the resolution stage. So just a thought. Just a thought. Now, the next step is really crucial. I'm going to be doing a video starting next week. I'm going to do some more in the Safety Programs Explained series regarding health and safety committees, because they're a very valuable piece of the health and safety culture in an organization. They're a very valuable piece of the health and safety process within an organization. They are, really and truthfully, if you're doing it right, they're the stewards of the health and safety program, but they're a lot of leverage for you. And you can leverage them to help you. So use the safety committee. Make sure that before you go through a lot of steps, if it's something that's new and organization-wide or even part of the organization, make sure that the safety committee is on board with it. They represent the workforce and they have a voice, because they're usually a cross-section of the workforce. Usually the best and ideal process, and something that's in legislation in lots of jurisdictions, is that the safety committee is usually made up of a cross-section of management and equal portions of the labor force. So you have both management, you have both labor force, and usually from different cross-sections or different parts and departments of the organization. So they make up this group. And it's a good idea to make sure that you've started down that road first. I know it sounds like it's a lot of time and a lot of time consumption, but I made this mistake as well. And as soon as I learned to start getting health and safety committees on board and started learning the political process behind all of this, believe it or not, getting stuff to policy groups and getting rules and procedures and processes moved through, and not only that, accepted, started to work so much better for me. So much better. Now, you have to realize with health and safety committees, a lot of jurisdictions have legislation in place how the employer communicates or receives something from health and safety committees. So a lot of times it's built into legislation where a health and safety committee can make a written recommendation to the employer. And that written recommendation has a requirement in a lot of different legislations and when there can be a response from the employer, in some cases, how the employer should respond. So just a few other points that you want to consider. Make sure that your recommendations are in line, effective, and have that same process in place. Make sure that even if you have to, you might want to have one of the chairs of the Health and Safety Committee with you when you're making a presentation. It helps to have an ally in place if you have to make presentations to a management committee, an executive committee. Things like this are very helpful. So consider how you're going to work with those health and safety committees, how you can leverage them to reach those goals that are for the best interest of the organization. And not only that, what it does is it also builds a good rapport between you and the Health and Safety Committee, because a lot of times if people think that they have authorship of a process, then they have that ownership, and then they have a commitment to it. So rather than saying that you are leading people by pushing them from behind, wouldn't it be better, do you think, if you could walk ahead of them and compel them to follow you? Just a thought. Now, this is a big now and a big but. You may still fail. Honestly, you will. There's going to be cases where you are going to go through all of these processes that I've just outlined. You've done all of the right things. Excuse me, water time. I should also apologize. There's a fan in the background there. You likely hear it versus the last stream. It's about the equivalent to human internal body temperature outside, and it's difficult to keep the house cool. So anyway, I apologize for the fan noise. But back to this. You may still fail, honestly, but it's important. Document, document, document. I can't stress it enough. Document when you're in meetings about this. Document your findings. Make sure that you have a paper trail, although most of it is digital through email these days. But no matter what, keep a journal. They're a handy thing, and they work quite well. Keep a journal of what you're doing. And date the pages. Make sure it's working, that you're working with it, and it's with you all the time. And then, once again, always copy your manager when you're dealing with controversial issues, and that will help. Now, you do have one more process in place, and let's just talk about this, and we're going to tread carefully with it. I've seen other health and safety professionals do it, and I've seen other organizations, people that were tasked with health and safety within the organization do it. And that's making an anonymous report to the authority having jurisdiction. Now, you have to consider if there's a worker or workers that are working in non-compliance and they're putting themselves at risk, you have to deal with that. Now, I've done a couple of videos, and when I edit this, I'll leave some videos in the description that you can also look at regarding the rights of workers and what to do in situations. But realize one thing, you do have whistleblower protection, but there still may be consequences because there's no perfect thing. And there's lots of cases before the courts these days right now with people that have blown the whistle and made a report, and they're dealing with the backlash from their employers. So I don't want to tell you what to do. I'm just telling you that there is that last resort, and maybe it's something that you might have to consider. I don't know, but I'll leave you with that one. Now, as I promised, some other do's and don'ts and some good processes that you can look at for how to navigate and get through that swamp of workplace politics. And it is a swamp. I think all of us at one time or another have had that opportunity to work in a toxic environment. And Jordan Peterson said it well. When you find yourself in a toxic environment and working through, trying to work your way through the political swamp, the very first number one thing that you need to do is always have in the back of your mind that you have to be considering looking for another job. So you have to look at making sure your resume is always up to date. I made that mistake, and I shouldn't have. I always thought that the toxic swamp could get better. I'm not telling you that you have to, cut and run. I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying Jordan Peterson said it well, and I wish I had listened to him a few years ago. But you have to be prepared that you may have to be looking for another job. But just some tips on how you can navigate the swamp. Always be aware of the workplace history. It's always good to ask a person about, hey, what happened with this? I've been told many times, and myself, and this is what I've done. And then this is a case where it's actually worked out right for me. It wasn't a mistake. When I was going to deal with something with different departments, I would go and ask a senior member of the organization, somebody had been there for a while, and tell me about this department and this situation. Then I'd ask them a bit more. And of course, they would always have their opinions and their thoughts about the group or whatever. So don't get caught up. Be aware of the history, but don't get caught up in it. No matter what, you have to be neutral. There's going to be rivalries between groups. There's going to be rivalries between people. There's going to be animosity. Don't pick sides. Be neutral. Your job is safety. Always portray that. It's no more and no less. Always portray that. So don't pick sides. Stay neutral. I can remember I started with an organization, and there was a lot of people that hated our department. They just hated it. But I didn't get caught up in it. I was part of the department, but I'm not the department. I'm not the face of the department. I'm the face of health and safety. So don't get into that fight. And chances are it's likely not a fight you want to be in or shouldn't be in anyway. So don't pick sides. Once again, your concern is safety, so make it valid and make it that point. And even if you have to say it, the more times that you say it, the more times it gets emphasized. No, it's not the thing where the more times you say it, the more times it becomes true. It's just the thing is you keep emphasizing it, then people will be clear on that's who you are. And invariably, there is always there's always office gossip and negative comments. Proverb I came across quite a while ago, but it says, liars secretly hoard hatred. Fools openly spread slander. Now, the idea behind that is it's not that people are keeping their hatred to themselves. What they are doing is that's all that they're willing to hold on to. And so a lot of times what happens is that's how a toxic environment is bred, is through office gossip. It keeps going. I can remember once that I was told constantly these two employees are fooling around. And you know what? The best thing I ever did is said, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't care. And if a person approached me again and started to say it, I don't want to hear it. Don't care. And then treat those same employees well and treat them as though you hadn't heard it. It's difficult. But you know what? It's the best thing you can do because you need to rise above it. I worked in the logging industry, and I worked with a fellow long ago. His name is Dennis Vandel. I'm not sure if he's still around, but everybody respected him. The company had as many times, like in the wintertime, we would swell to as many as 180 people. So it wasn't a small operation. It was big. But everybody in the organization loved this man. They thought he was great. And the biggest thing is he never spoke ill of anybody, never got involved in office gossip, even though we ran machinery in that, but he never got involved with all of that. So he was always separate from that. And really and truthfully, if I look back, I think that's why everybody thought he was awesome. So don't get involved with office gossip. Now, the next thing is, you know what? And I've been called lots of names. I've been told lots of things. I've had lots of negative comments behind my back, etc. You know what? You're likely going to be a target just by the very nature of your job and the things you do, especially if things like investigations lead to discipline, etc. Just one moment. Especially if even termination. No matter what, things are going to look back at you and it's going to be your fault. Doesn't matter. And remember one thing. If you do an investigation, and I'll leave a link for the playlist for incident investigations, the theory and practice, down in the description when this is edited and posted. But you're investigating the facts. Same thing when you're dealing with anything with health and safety. You're dealing with the facts and dealing with the science behind it. other people that are not in compliance and not following the process, if something happens to them through discipline, workplace discipline, or termination, that's on them. It's not on you. But you have to realize that you may be called things by coworkers and other people. Don't take it personally. It's tough. Don't take it personally, but always remember, sticks and stones, yeah, well, what more need I say, right? Now, the next one is hard. You don't want to make Faustian bargains just to get something through. Ethics above all. Our job is such, our position, our trade, what we do has to be beyond reproach. And you know what? We don't want to be seen as making a deal with the devil, ever. Okay, we want to fight the good fight, run the race, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything above board. So don't make unethical deals just to reach your goal. This is, and it doesn't matter whether you're in health and safety or not, but I do find in my profession that a lot of times it gets asked, hey, Kevin, you know what? If you just support this process, or if you just look the other way, I'll help you with getting this through the committee. And I've been approached like that, and I know lots of other people have. And you know what? The best thing that we could ever do is say, you know what? I may fail, but I'm not going to fail like that. Or I may fail, but I'm not going to win like that. So don't make foolish or unethical deals just to reach your goal. I can't stress it enough. It's absolutely imperative. Now, the other thing is, and this is mostly safety people, but if you work in environmental or if you work in anything where you have to change what your findings were or change the issues just to get something through. And what I mean by that is we a lot of times are told or asked by people, hey, this is a safety issue, right? No. And like I've had people who wanted to get the flooring replaced in their offices because it's a safety issue. And now, yes, there was cracks in the floor covering, there was. But they were bound and determined to make it a tripping hazard. In fact, one person even sat in a chair, a rolling chair, and tried to wheel over some of the breaks in the floor where you wouldn't have had a chair. Not at all. They were just in the walking area. Said, look, it's a safety issue. Come on, Kevin, you've got to... And look, Kevin, if you would just make this a safety issue, I'll help you with this. So once again, it goes back to that earlier point about the unethical deal. So don't entertain something that's a non-safety issue to become a safety issue just to bring about a deal. You know what? It's not going to work. It's not going to work at all. Now, the other thing is always have a positive outlook. You know what? And it's difficult a lot of times. If anything, the last 18 months has taught us how difficult it is. But you got to have a positive outlook. Positive outlooks are also infectious. But worse, I think it's Mark Twain said it best, is a lie will travel around the world in an instant and truth is still lacing up its boots. And the absolute same thing with positivity and negativity. Negativity seems to flow like air through an organization where you have to pick up a positive outlook and carry it on your back, and even then it's a struggle. So it is, but the more that you're positive about it, the more that others around you will be, and the more that they'll look at you, and you will likely, or be less likely, the recipient of bad comments and gossip, etc. Now, document what you do, by all means, everything you do and everything you say. Now, the reason I say that is a lot of times you'll be in a meeting and you haven't brought any books or anything to write on or whatever, and you've been told, hey, Kevin, you're going to look after this. Yeah, sure, I will. Or can you look after this? Yeah, I can do that too. And then you go away and you wonder, what did I promise? And then pretty soon you drop the ball. So once again, it goes back to investing in your reputation. But the other idea is when you're documenting, is you can be assured of who's going to do what, or who said what, or who promised you what, or who said that they're going to comply with what. Now, the other way to deal with that too is don't be afraid to follow up with an email, and don't be afraid to say, hey, thanks for the time today. Thanks for the meeting today. These are some of the things I documented that we covered. Do you have any additional questions? And if you get a follow-up email from them saying, nope, that's exactly the way I see it, then things are perfect. At least you both have a level playing field, and that helps to deal with the political climate. And this leads me to maybe the last point. Oops. Be respectful. A lot of times we will feel the necessity to call somebody out. And don't be afraid. You should always call out somebody, especially when it comes to health and safety, about unsafe acts or things that are unsafe, or in any kind of business. Depending, let's say that you had a meeting, and let's put it in a different prospect. Let's say that you, one person or one part of the group works in sales, and the other part of the group works in managing the warehouse, so you're doing the supply chain stuff. And somebody in supply chain says, yeah, we'll have all of this on the truck by morning, and it won't be a problem, and that's the case. And you have a follow-up meeting a week later because the shipment was late, it didn't work out properly, and you have it in your notes. You did the follow-up email. Don't be afraid of calling the person out and saying, hey, you guys were going to have this out on the truck. You said you were. What happened? But be respectful and always give that person the opportunity for redemption. That's part of it. What happens a lot of times is people jump down each other's throat and not showing any kind of grace whatsoever. But if you give the person the opportunity for some redemption, saying, yeah, that's on us. You know what? The truck was late. Half the crew didn't show up. But realistically, I need to start having some contingency plan in place. Great. Now you've got an understanding. Now, if it starts to happen a second and third time, then you might have to do something else. The same thing works in a safety setting. You've had a meeting, you had a pre-work meeting, and you were told that workers were going to use scaffolding. You come back the next day, and they're using pallets on the ends of forks of boom lifts without any kind of fall protection, and you want to throw a conniption. Rather than behaving badly, there's a process that you can go through with that. And then at the next meeting, you can say, hey, what happened? And the person can likely say, you know what, the scaffolding didn't arrive. It was part of the process that we had to deal with. I need to follow a contingency. I need to have something in place because that was that project phase and I couldn't let it go undone. At least you can have a discussion over it. But if you're not respectful, you know what, that opportunity is not going to be there, and that ability to communicate is not going to be there. We, as safety professionals, always want to stop that rolling snowball before it gets out of control. We do. We want to get in front of it and we want to stop it. But before we get in front of it, we have to ask ourselves, can we actually handle it? Do we need help? Do I need my manager in this? Do I need to have other people behind me? And so always plan ahead, have a good plan, be respectful at every phase of your plan, be ethical, be factual, be purposeful, and be prepared with practicable solutions. And that's going to help you navigate that political swamp. I noticed the chat's been really quiet. I've done most of the talking. I'm assuming that nobody had any questions. So that's fine. We can likely finish up. I thank everybody who did show up and did participate and have a look. Thank you very much. And as always, I'm going to just ask you, if you haven't done so already, just click that subscribe button. Next chat session, or pardon me, next stream, which is going to be on July 14th, going to talk about how to deal with the things after the root cause analysis. You've done a root cause analysis, now what? And a lot of times when you're doing a root cause analysis, you're going to find that, you know what, the root cause isn't that easy to fix. It isn't. So what do you do in the meantime? What do you do, especially if the root cause was, say, a manager issue and the manager's still there? So what do you do? So I want to talk about that because it's often a pitfall that people will find themselves trapped in and not know how to get out of. But there is some easy ways to get out of it, and there's some easy ways to start addressing some of those processes. So that's what I'm going to talk about next stream on July 14th. It'll be at the same time, 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And they'll be like that for the next every couple of weeks until I find out if they're popular or not, in which case then I will speed them up if they are and make them weekly. But if they're just the usual run-of-the-mill and people are only able to make every couple of weeks, then that's what I'll keep it at. But till then, if you have other topics or other things you want to see addressed in the stream, by all means, leave me a comment once the stream's processed and ready. And I appreciate all comments. They're important. And also, if you feel like it, do me a favor and just click that like button. Give me a like. Just snap it, and I appreciate it. I really do. The other thing is, if you find that people will get some value out of it, by all means, share this and share it out. Sharing is caring. Yeah. And thank you, Jim. Thank you for the comment. So anyway, take care and look forward to the opportunity that I can see you again next time. And yeah, so in the meantime, do me a favor, lead by example. Don't just think about safety. Don't just talk about safety, but wherever you are, do it. Make sure it's part of what you do. Lead by an example. If other people see you acting safely and doing it well and doing it comfortably, who knows, they might actually follow. Bye for now.